Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Munib with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. The Taliban have called the agreement with the Afghan government on procedural rules for peace talks a positive step. Taliban spokesman Dr. Mohammad Naeem said there is no clear response from Kabul on the development. However, he said a spokesman for the Kabul delegation has acknowledged that overall procedure has been agreed upon. But he said further discussion is needed on intra-Afghan talks. In the United States, the battleground state of Wisconsin has reconfirmed President-elect Joe Biden's win by over 20,000 votes after a recount. State election officials say the recount produced minor change in the final breakdown of over 800,000 ballots. Meanwhile, Biden has named all-women communications team, choosing Jen Psaki as his White House press secretary. Armenia's president has asked the government to resign and hold fresh elections within a year, calling the Russia-brokered ceasefire agreement with Azerbaijan a great national tragedy. President Armen Sarkisyan said a technocrat interim government of national accord should be formed at the earliest. The death toll by COVID-19 in the United States has crossed 266,000 with over 13.3 million cases. India has recorded nearly 39,000 cases and 433 fatalities overnight, taking the death toll to over 137,000. Pakistan's death toll has crossed 8,000 with 40 new deaths and more than 2,800 cases in the last 24 hours. While globally, the virus has claimed 1.45 million lives and infected over 62.6 million people. Thirteen people have died and 15 others are injured after a passenger bus and van collided in Pakistan's Punjab province. Rescue officials say both vehicles got fire after the accident in the Sheikhupura district. And in football, Wolverhampton Wanderers beat Arsenal 2-1 in an English Premier League clash at Emirates Stadium. Pedro Neto opened the scoring for Wolves in the 27th minute but was equalised by Gabriel 3 minutes later. Daniel Podence then put Wolves ahead in the 42nd minute, with Arsenal failing to find an equaliser. These are the headlines. News in detail coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. The Taliban have called the agreements with the Afghan government on procedural rules for peace talks a positive step. Taliban spokesman Dr. Mohammad Naeem said there is no clear response from the Kabul on the development. However, he said a spokesman for the Kabul delegation has acknowledged that the overall procedure has been agreed upon. But he said further discussion is needed on intra-Afghan talks. Meanwhile, a member of the government team said both sides only agreed to the 21 articles of the rules. Both sides had open talks in Qatar on September 12 but failed to reach an agreement on the working principles. Meanwhile, Iran has buried its assassinated nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in a cemetery in northern Tehran. Only several dozen senior military commanders and his family attended the ceremony due to coronavirus precautions. In a televised speech, Defense Minister Brigadier General Amir Hatami said no crime will go unanswered by the Iranian people. Meanwhile, state media alleged that the weapon used in the killing was made in Israel. In northern Iraq, a rocket attack has caused a large fire at an oil refinery, briefly halting operations. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attacks in Salahuddin province. Iraq's oil ministry says the fire broke out in fuel storage tank at the Sinea refinery. No casualties were reported. The fire was put out and operations resumed within a few hours. Authorities say the operations were halted as a security measure to prevent further damage. Now, Houthi rebels say they have killed 8 Yemeni soldiers in a rocket attack on a military camp in Marib province. The Houthi-run Al-Masira TV says 7 other soldiers were wounded in the strike. Meanwhile, Yemeni army said 7 civilians were killed in the Houthi rocket attack on a village in Al-Hudaydah city. Military said 10 others were also wounded. Yemen's Red Sea port city of Hudaydah is a vital lifeline for millions facing starvation. The city has seen a shaky ceasefire between government and Houthis after a UN-sponsored truce in Stockholm in 2018. Meanwhile, now in the United States, the battleground state of Wisconsin has reconfirmed President-elect Joe Biden's wins by over 20,000 votes after a recount. State election officials say the recount produced minor changes in the final breakdown of over 800,000 ballots. Details in this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump's struggle to claw his way back into the Oval Office through legal action is on a downward spiral. After setbacks in Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Biden's overall lead over President Trump in Wisconsin has grown by 87 votes after the recount. Trump's campaign requested a recount in battleground states, making allegations of widespread electoral fraud. Biden won the presidential election with 306 Electoral College votes, leading Trump by over 6 million in popular vote. Meanwhile, the president-elect is set to receive his first intelligence briefing today. With the presidential transition picking pace, Biden unveiled his all-female senior press team. The team, led by Kate Bedingfield, comprises Jen Psaki as White House press secretary. Earlier on Sunday, President-elect Joe Biden sustained a hairline fracture in his midfoot after slipping while playing with his dog.
Well, now moving on, Armenia's president has asked the government to resign and hold fresh elections within a year, calling the Russia-brokered ceasefire agreement with Azerbaijan a great national tragedy. President Armen Sarkisyan said a technocrat interim government of national accord should be formed at the earliest. Sarkisyan said the interim government could work for 6 months to 1 year and lead the country to early elections. He also called for major reforms to the constitution to establish better checks and balances on the government. Rebellious forces in Ethiopia's Tigray region claim to have shot down a military aircraft and retaken a town from federal forces. There was no immediate comment from the government or the military on the claims. A government-authorized manhunt is underway for rebel leaders in Tigray after the army took control of the region's capital. The state TV said police have issued arrest warrants for 17 military officers on charges of treason, while warrants for 117 other senior officers have already been issued. Hundreds of people were killed and nearly 44,000 fled to neighboring Sudan during the fighting. Now in Sri Lanka, prison guards shot dead 6 inmates and wounded 35 others while controlling a riot on the outskirts of the capital, Colombo. Police say inmates were rebelling against overcrowding at the Maharaja jail amid surging coronavirus cases. 2 prison officers have been critically injured in the unrest. More than 1,000 inmates in 5 prisons have tested positive for the coronavirus and at least 2 have died. About 50 prison guards have also tested positive. The Prime Ministers of Russia, China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan are attending the 19th SCO summit today. The summit is being virtually hosted by India, which will be represented by a special envoy. Pakistan will be represented by its Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs. The 4 observer countries, including Iran, Afghanistan, Belarus and Mongolia, will also participate. Turkmenistan has been invited as a special guest. The annual Prime Ministers' level summit deals primarily with the trade and economic agenda of the organization. India has recorded nearly 39,000 cases and 433 fatalities overnight, taking the death toll to over 137,000. The global number of deaths from the virus has crossed 1.45 million, with the caseload exceeding 62 million. Details in this report. An unprecedented surge in coronavirus cases across the world has made it virtually impossible to imagine the return of normalcy. Canada is set to extend its restrictions for all travelers entering the country until January 2021. And authorities in Mexico warn the actual number of cases may be much higher due to low testing. The COVID-19 death toll in the US has crossed 266,000, with over 13 million cases. The top US infectious disease expert has warned of a surge upon surge in the coming weeks.
We're going to have to make decisions as a nation, state, city, and family that we're in a very difficult time, and we're going to have to do the kinds of restrictions of things we would like to have done, particularly in this holiday season, because we're entering into what's really a precarious situation because we're in the middle of a steep slope.
British authorities say the risk of a third wave is imminent in the absence of right measures to curb the virus, while a curfew in Turkey has failed to contain the second wave, with the country reporting record-high deaths for the 7th straight day. In another development, North Korea is stepping up disinfection work as cases rise in the peninsula.
We are following prevention guidelines by disinfecting all equipment and facilities within reach. As the weather is getting cold, we are enhancing a checkup on people with fever. We will keep in mind that our enemy is carelessness and self-conceit when we proceed this disinfection work.
Whereas South Korea has announced a ban on year-end parties, among other curbs, after China has also observed a slight uptick in cases, with 18 infections reported on the mainland. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 40 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 8,025. The Health Ministry says over 2,800 tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said there are more than 48,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of over 398,000 countrywide cases, more than 341,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 173,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 119,000 cases so far. Now, the European Union says it will help vulnerable refugees in Pakistan by providing basic amenities amid COVID-19. In an interview, European Union Ambassador to Pakistan, Androla Caminaro, said the bloc has signed an MOU with the UNHCR to give $12 million to Afghan refugees. The three-year project will benefit 370,000 migrants and their Pakistani host communities. This funding aims to promote health and social protection by constructing sanitary facilities amid a second wave of coronavirus. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Jordan and Palestine have pinned hopes on US President-elect Joe Biden to revive peace talks over a two-state solution. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met Jordan's King Abdullah in the Red Port city of Aqaba. In a palace statement, the monarch said he fully backs Palestinian statehood. He stressed Jordan stands with all its resources alongside Palestinians in achieving their legitimate rights. In his first conversation with an Arab leader since the election, Biden spoke with King Abdullah last week. He told the monarch that he hoped to cooperate on supporting a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The latest round of talks of Syrian Constitutional Committee is set to start today at UN headquarters in Geneva. The UN's envoy, Geir Pedersen, says the talks aim to draft a new constitution to pave the way for a political solution to the conflict. He said the peace talks are scheduled to run till Friday and resume in January next year. There is no set deadline for the outcomes of the negotiations. Pedersen said there is a deep lack of trust between Syrian governments and opposition's representatives. Syrian Constitutional Committee was officially launched in Geneva last year to draft a new constitution. In Brazil, candidates backed by President Jair Bolsonaro have suffered major defeats in the country's municipal elections. Voters returned to vote in 57 cities, including 18 state capitals, amid surging COVID-19 and pre-poll violence. In the country's financial hub, Sao Paulo, centre-right Mayor Bruno Covas was re-elected for a near 4-year term. President Jair Bolsonaro's candidate for Sao Paulo's mayor came in 4th in the first-round voting. In Rio de Janeiro, centrist Eduardo Paes emerged victorious instead of Bolsonaro-backed Marcelo Crivella. Bolsonaro-supported candidates also suffered defeat in Fortaleza and Belém. The municipal election outcome is likely to complicate Bolsonaro's re-election. Now, the UK has ordered British telecommunication firms not to install the new HUAWEI 5G kit from September. In a statement, Digital Minister Oliver Dowden says London is setting out a plan for the removal of high-risk vendors. Dowden said unprecedented powers will be used to identify and ban equipment which poses a threat to national security. So the government is collaborating with the Japanese firm NEC. He also mentioned plans to establish new research facilities to diversify the 5G supply chain. The minister said London has already earmarked an initial $333 million investment for the trials. Earlier, Britain announced all HUAWEI equipment will be removed by 2027 after security fears and US pressure. HUAWEI has termed the decision disappointing. Meanwhile, China's Chang'e 5 lunar probe has successfully completed the combination separation. The National Space Administration says the mission is ready for a soft landing on the moon. It said the orbiter and sample return vehicle will wait for docking with the ascender on the lunar orbit. All systems of the probe are in good condition and the communication for ground measurement and control works well. Deputy Chief Designer Peng Jing says all 4 parts of the probe will form different combinations.
Depending on the phases of the different missions and the mission every probe carries out, they form different combinations. So during its flight, the probe's configuration will be different. Some parts will be on the orbit, others will be on the surface, and still others will carry a parachute and land back on Earth.
Meanwhile, 13 people have died and 15 others are injured after a passenger bus and van collided in Pakistan's Punjab province. Rescue officials says both vehicles caught fire after the accident in the Sheikhupura district. Officials said low visibility due to foggy weather was a factor in the incident. The added death toll is feared to rise as most of the injured people are in critical condition. The deceased persons are reportedly belonging to the same family who were returning to Naroval from Lahore after attending a wedding ceremony. Now, the eruption of one of Indonesia's most dangerous volcanoes has caused panic and evacuation of nearly 3,000 residents. The government says no casualties have been reported so far, but the displaced need money and aid. Authorities have warned the nearby areas of hot clouds, lava, avalanche and poisonous gas. They added the volcano has acquired the second highest level on the country's 4-tier alert system due to its increasing threat. Indonesia has nearly 130 active volcanoes, more than any other country. Now in Australia, guests at the Fraser Island largest resort have been told to leave as a significant bushfire continues to burn. Firefighters are struggling to control the blaze that has already destroyed 40% of the World Heritage listed island. Temperatures are forecast to peak at 34 degrees Celsius as a heat wave sweeps across the region. Incident controller James Haig said the vegetation is extremely dry and easy to ignite. He said firefighters are also stymied by limited access to the blaze in the island remote north. Queensland Parks and Wildfire Service said the fire was burning on 2 fronts across 74,000 hectares. It said the blaze is not threatening properties. Meanwhile, New Zealand has filed charges against 13 parties over the fatal volcanic eruption on White Island last year. The country's primary regulator, WorkSafe, says the parties did not meet safety obligations while taking tourists there. WorkSafe Chief Executive Phil Park says 10 organizations have been charged under the Health and Safety at Work Act. Each charge carries a maximum fine of $1.06 million. A further 3 have been charged as directors or individuals and face maximum fines of $211,000. The coroner's office says they are conducting a separate investigation to examine whether criminal charges should be laid. The surprise eruption of the volcano in December 2019 killed 22 tourists and injured dozens. Argentine prosecutors are investigating Diego Maradona's doctor for possible manslaughter following his death 4 days ago. Police in Buenos Aires have raided the house and private clinic and Leopoldo Luque. The police are trying to establish if there was negligence in Maradona's treatment following surgery. The 60-year-old died of a heart attack at his home where he was recuperating. Dr. Luque denies any wrongdoing. The football legend scored 34 goals in 91 appearances for Argentina, representing them in 4 World Cups. In the Colombian capital of Bogota, a hummingbird sanctuary is providing a picturesque respite from the stresses of urban life. Details in this report.
The Baramuno corridor, located in the forest reserve to the east of Bogota, is proving to be a source of relief for city dwellers. 10 years ago, workers at the Montserrat Hill began to work with native species to restore the deforested hill. Currently, 115 species of birds have been spotted, including 18 types of hummingbirds and some migratory species.
Sometimes it does not seem like it is real because we are in front of a city of 8 million inhabitants who generate noise on a daily basis. You can hear noise from the city, the generation of population, aggressiveness. This trail in Montserrat is like an oasis where a person can come, let go of their stress and excess baggage.
Every day, the visitors take delight in watching the hummingbirds with their binoculars and capturing them with their camera lenses. The trail supervisor, Camilo Cantor, says a good birding day can see on average from 25 to 35 different species of birds.
I think it becomes a privilege for many people in Colombia and bird watchers around the world because the hummingbirds here are exclusive to this area. They are not seen in other parts of the country. Maybe they will be, but with difficulty. They would have to walk, wait a long time for a hummingbird to land on a flower. At the Permano Trail, with these feeders, we are guaranteeing that in a short time, you can catch a glimpse, enjoy and photograph them.
Hummingbirds are a unique species on the American continent and found in great diversity in Colombia.
Russia's breakdancer Kasset and Japan's Shiga Kicks were crowned the Red Bull BC1 champions in Austria. More in this report.
Hey, just a kid, drop the beat.
The 17th edition of the Red Bull BC1 invited 16 of the world's best breakers from 11 countries. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, there have been few chances for face-to-face battles. But this crew managed to meet at Salzburg's Hangar 7, which houses the Flying Bulls aircraft as well as a collection of Formula One cars. Kastet, a member of the 316 crew, won the breakdancing title for the 2nd year in a row by beating Belgium's Mad Max.
I feel super happy. Yeah, but now I can't believe it. For me, when I come at the first battle at stage, it was like I'm at practice. But it was a nice place for practice because no people, no crazy reaction. But it kept me calm because nobody crowd to you, oh, let's go. And it was okay. And when I see my family, of course, I was very happy.
Shiga Kicks, a member of the Red Bull BC1 All-Stars, became the youngest ever competitor to win the title at the age of 18 when he beat Russia's Al Khalil.
To be honest, I'm super happy right now, and I still can't believe it's real, you know. And yeah, I worked hard for this competition. Not only this year, you know, I have been working hard to win this competition. So I'm super happy right now.
Breakdancing is also scheduled to feature at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games.
Well, now European stocks are trading mixed as investors pause to assess the challenges faced by an early rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. Europe's stock 600 has slipped under the flat line. The CAC 40 in Paris and Italy's FTSE MIB have shed as well. But London's FTSE and Frankfurt's DAX have edged up marginally. Earlier, most Asian bourses edged lower with the exception of mainland Chinese stocks. China's manufacturing sector's Purchasing Managers Index has registered a remarkable growth in November. The index is an indicator of economic health and business conditions for the manufacturing sector. National Bureau of Statistics says in November, the index came in at 52.1% with an increase of 0.7% from October. It said the rise is a record high during 2020 so far. For a consecutive 5 months now, the country's PMI has remained over the 51% mark. Beijing says 19 out of 21 industries surveyed reported their PMI in the expansion range.
This reflects accelerated unleashing of the capacity of both production and demand in these industries, with notable achievements in the overall planning for COVID-19 prevention and control and economic and social development. China's economic recovery has maintained a positive momentum amid continued stability.
Now in football, Wolverhampton Wanderers beat Arsenal 2-1 in a Premier League clash at Emirates Stadium. The Gunners sit 14th in the table after 5 losses in 10 league games. Pedro Neto opened the scoring for Wolves in the 27th minute, but was equalised by Gabriel 3 minutes later. Daniel Podence then put the Wolves ahead in the 42nd minute, with Arsenal failing to find an equaliser. This is Arsenal's worst start to a season since 1981. In another fixture, Chelsea played a goalless draw against Tottenham Hotspurs at Stamford Bridge, while Manchester United came behind to beat Southampton 3-2 at St Mary's Stadium. Meanwhile, AC Milan beat Fiorentina 2-0 at the San Siro to maintain their dominance on the Serie A table. Alessio Romagnoli and Frank Kessie scored goals for the hosts. Romagnoli put Milan ahead in the 17th minute, and Kessie added a second goal from a penalty 11 minutes later. Milan are now 21 Serie A games unbeaten since losing to Genoa in March. They top the table with 23 points from 9 matches and 5 clear of nearest rivals Inter Milan. In another fixture, Napoli thrashed Roma 4-0 at the Stadio San Paolo. Lorenzo Insigne put Napoli ahead with a sublime free kick in the 30th minute. Fabian Ruiz, Dries Mertens and Matteo Politano added 3 more goals in the second half to hand Roma their first defeat of the season. Now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.